In the scientific community with you and your colleagues, how often are you discussing culture? Because as a layperson, I'm not a scientist. I just imagine you all in your white lab coats in a in a lab in a very clean lab, just talking about science and doing calculations. But I would imagine that um, you know, all of you are people with these interesting backgrounds. You, for instance, are from South America, and you currently work and live in Germany. So, um, I guess what kind of discussions do you have about culture in the lab or during your lunch break?
Oh, not many.
Not many.
No, but I was last year at an event at Cal Poly Pomona with Professor Belal. He has a lot of students from different parts of the world. So from Indian descent, Mexican descent. So California is like mixture of
Very
cultures,
much, yes.
and his research is trying to fit these cultural needs. So he's doing plant-based for these different typical cultural dishes, either for Indian cuisine or Mexican cuisine or Syrian Lebanese cuisine. So then I think the shift to culture is important. So to create new products that fit this necessity, but it's one of the few persons that I've seen that is actually taking this into consideration when creating plant-based.
That's interesting. Do you think that that has inspired your work or your research, any, or do you, looking forward, do you hope to take some of the things that he's done with culture and put it into science?
Yeah, I think this is something that is speaks more to the public as only plain science and plain this is myth-like. But if it doesn't really touch some emotion, then it's really difficult to get acceptance for consumers. I think this is the key for science also to understand. So food is not just food. It has an emotion involved with it. We are way far, so really far from the point where food was only hunger and nutrition. So it's of social relevance to see how we place food. And the plant-based trends are not going to take off if we don't really satisfy these needs.
Yeah, that's so true. And just thinking about California, where you were, and how much of a melting pot it is. I'm from New York, and it's the same way. So some of the we have plant-based meats and plant-based alternatives, but a lot of the cultures is very difficult to have some of the alternatives there. Although, like you mentioned in your Asian trip, that there's no necessity for alternatives, because I think about when I eat Indian food in nearby, there's a menu with meat, and they say, well, this stuff here does not have meat. There's potatoes and chana or chickpeas or the garbanzo beans or whatever someone would call it. And so I just find that that's so interesting that some of these cultures, especially in the Americas, to have plant-based alternatives that fit with the culture. And also, by the way, some of the historical diets, or the diets from people's families from years and years ago, for different reasons, people can't eat that way because we're not as active. We might be working in offices or working indoors, and we're not outdoors anymore. And then also there's processed foods that make some of those diets harder to attain or make it less healthy. So or farming practices, things like that. So this is interesting to see where when science taps more into culture, what that'll look like.
I
So
think it will
yeah,
be more promising, but
absolutely. So aside from that, now that we've mentioned looking forward with science and culture, just panning out, we're looking at the future of food science. What do you think consumers should look out for? What do you think will be most important?
So I was visiting Singapore, and I would like to say this country is one of the hubs of innovative, disruptive science.
Uh,
And what I saw was precision fermentation. So you take meat from the bioreactor, you grow your own meat. I found this really interesting. Or there's also the trend for reconstructed dairy. So you can produce dairy proteins without the actual cow. So there's no need for the cow itself.
so animal, what you're describing is animal protein with no need for the animal.
Yeah, but I think this is at really early stages. It's still a quite expensive and new technology. But I know some of our colleagues from Thermo Fisher were working on the bioreactor side for culture meat. So this is something that is going to be a trend in a few years. And also what I saw is now people are getting older than a few years back. So the life expectancy is also increasing. And we not only need to feed these people, but also we need to keep them healthy. So we need to make sure that the elderly consume vitamins, fibers, proteins, and usually they don't like to eat that much. So we need to enrich these foods with these products to ensure that the elderly age well. And one of the trends I saw was encapsulation of these vitamins or active compounds from plants, extracts, and so on, to introduce them in a diet.
That's very interesting. So essentially, is that like functional food? Is that the same as functional food or
Yeah,
nutraceuticals?
yeah. So everything comes in cycles.
Right, right. Yeah, so a nutritionist told me that it's important to, as you get to a certain age, to build more muscle. So they suggested supplements to me. So just the idea of supplementation is very interesting to me now. And as I study it more for, not for work or for science, but for personal health, now there are like bars, candy bars, or drinks that have the supplement inside of it, and they have all these different sweeteners and things like that. So that's very interesting. One of the trends I saw that's potentially related to this is I don't know if you're familiar with GLP ones, the medications like Ozempic or anything like that. That these weight loss medications that when people eat less, similar to the concept of the elderly, they eat less. They need more nutrient dense foods, and sometimes in this industrialized society it's not easy to go to a farm and find these nutrient dense foods that are healthy. So encapsulating nutrients and placing them into foods or incorporating them into foods might become more of a thing. So I'm looking forward to see how science solves this, you and your colleagues.
Yeah, I'm also eager to see what's happening in the next years.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. I learned a lot from that conversation. I appreciate your time, and I hope to speak to you again on camera and on a recording. Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you for having me.